Coming up, does an underwater creature terrorize the citizens of upstate New York?
I started screaming in fear.
Startling videotape may prove a monster lurks in Lake Champlain.
Recently, sightings half a world apart have renewed interest in the possibility that lake monsters are real. At Loch Ness in Scotland, Operation Deep Scan tracked a large creature through the water for more than 2 miles. At Lake Champlain in New York State, a sightings crew has been monitoring strange lake activity reported by dozens of credible eyewitnesses. It's hard to imagine, but the natural serenity of Lake Champlain is being disturbed by a monster reportedly lurking just below the surface of the lake. Sightings of a long serpent-like creature have been reported for nearly 300 years. A pioneer's powder horn, dated September 29, 1700, bears the earliest recorded image of the Lake Champlain monster. Sightings have continued to the present day, but aren't often discussed in public.
Probably 99% of the people have seen it, but they won't talk about it because you do get some ridicule.
Lake Champlain is located on the border between New York and Vermont, extending northward into Quebec province in Canada. The locals have affectionately dubbed the monster Champ, but there is surprisingly little publicity or commercialism associated with this sea serpent. Only now, in the wake of new scientific information about the Loch Ness monster, have eyewitnesses felt that they won't be ridiculed for coming forward.
You could see underneath the water, it was a huge black mat. It was just monster. It was scary. It was that big. You could see it had a definite body, shape of a body. Then you could see it definitely had a neck and a head. And then all of a sudden, up out of this water came this big black thing. I mean, it was huge, black and shiny, and then it went away. There wasn't a ripple or anything. And I got the pictures of it just going under the water, and you can see the little bumps, 2 bumps.
I started as a disbeliever. I went right on past being a believer into a knower. It's 4 of us. We're out on the boat just taking an evening sail. And it was at that point, with no expectations of anything, that we began to see some very strange things going on.
Up came the neck and the head, literally like my hand is doing. It turned and it looked at me, and it turned and it went right back down into the water.
We took the camcorder out, and then, in fact, Champ, or several Champs, were back again.
I started screaming in fear. I found myself climbing on the canvas top of my boat, which I know doesn't hold me. That's how scared I was.
At this point, my wife and daughter spot one of the creatures out in the distance, and I zoom in on it so that you can see it. And you can see one of its humps sticking up out of the water. There's 2. 2 in the middle is 4. 1 to the left out front is 5 in a row. And now what we spot out there is some fins or flippers, and you can see them flipping back and forth on the water.
While I was in the canoe heading to the boat, my daughter saw him. She said, "Dad, there's something out there." And I looked, and there was Champ, this neck and head out of the water moving towards Scott's bonnet. You see a creature with a long neck, and it looks like a Volkswagen's body when you first see it in the video. It looks floating across the water. And then it stops, and it starts thrashing in the water, and you see a neck and head. And then he swings his neck around and lifts his tail up, swings his entire body around and lifts his neck and head out of the water entirely.
My wife and I were on our way to a picnic, and on the way I decided to pull over at a lookout point just to take some scenic view. I noticed something out in the distance about half mile out. At first I thought it was a large tree stump. It wasn't bobbing, it was moving deliberately. And all of a sudden I saw it like bend over, snake-like, and dive into the water.
Considering the varying locations of the sightings and the diversity of the witnesses, among them a teacher, a therapist, a restaurant owner, an engineer, a corrections officer, the possibility of a massive hoax is highly unlikely. Certainly, residents here are not trying to cash in on the lake monster's notoriety. There are no souvenir shops, no public references to the creatures sighted here. Champ Quest is one notable research organization operating on the lake, headed by Dennis Hall and his partner, Richard Dool.
The sole purpose is to collect definitive evidence to prove the existence of the creatures. We are already convinced that they are real. We have to present this to the scientific community. there are some very big specimens seen in the lake, eyewitness descriptions. The average size is 20 to 30 feet, but there have been sightings where it was seen much larger. There was a sighting this year on August 1st on the next point down, a place called Texaco Beach. And what we should do is look for some high mounds. There may be a feeding area around here. There's one right about here. You're looking about 30 feet of water. Yeah. You think you could make a dive today?
No problem. Let's go see if he's home.
All right. A lot of people believe that there's one wretched creature that's been in the lake for a millennia, and that's really absurd. There would have to be a breeding colony to subsist this long.
Despite numerous documented sightings, few scientists can agree on what type of creature Champ is likely to be. Theories range from a snake-like zeuglodon, thought to be extinct for the last 20 million years, to another extinct reptile, the plesiosaur.
There's no geological evidence that plesiosaurs or anything like that survived beyond the Cretaceous extinction 60 million years ago. On the other hand, the coelacanth was only discovered in the late 1930s, that fish, and that had been extinct also for over 60 million years.
If it is a plesiosaur in Loch Ness and Lake Champlain, why would these creatures survive when so many others from those eras were extinct?
Crocodiles survived, and they can get up to 20 feet or more. Various groups survived. It's possible that in certain areas that some species may have survived the extinction, especially when we're not really certain as to what caused the extinction. Loch Ness and Lake Champlain are very similar geologically. They're deep glacial lakes that were at one time arms of the sea. So one could say there were marine animals living in these open lakes, and as the land rose, they could have been sort of isolated. And it's the same geology in both lakes.
One of the most compelling pieces of evidence supporting the plesiosaur theory is this recently discovered 1938 photograph of a bizarre carcass removed from a whale's stomach. Some experts have speculated that this could be the skeleton of a baby plesiosaur consumed at sea, suggesting the plesiosaur, like the coelacanth, may not really be extinct.
There may be all kinds of things there that we don't know about. The thing about it is, I think you have to keep an open mind and see what else comes up.
Do monsters really exist? Or can these pictures be explained by existing natural phenomena, like otters feeding fish or fallen logs? Eyewitnesses believe wholeheartedly in the existence of Champ, but until indisputable evidence is brought to the scientific community, the monster of Lake Champlain will remain a mystery.